What is up, Ravens flock? Huge shout out for your support for the 410 Sports Talk. James and Glenn are the best in the business. They're killing it right now. They love talking Raven talk. Make sure you go subscribe to their channel. Let's go Ravens. Big trust.
Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of 410 Sports Talk. James Haskell, Glenn Martin, here to talk about some folks' favorite running back, some folks' fantasy darling coming into the season. Certainly was, last year, J.K. Dobbins, number 27 for the Baltimore Ravens. It was back, removed from the PUP list, back at practice today, and it's been since preseason game. What was that? Game 3?
Was it 3? I think it was 3.
Yeah, against the Washington Commanders. And man, I couldn't be more excited. I know the Baltimore Ravens fans are excited, along with ourselves and the team as well. But let's talk about what we've heard about how he looked, what type of impact this will have early on and what it means for the Ravens from running back position and JK as well. So Glenn, what have you been hearing about how he's looked coming back?
Yeah, I mean, everything I'm hearing, he's looked really fast, really explosive. He looked sharp. John Harbaugh was asked about his, how he thought he looked. He said he thought he looked pretty good. Still not doing like full team activities yet. I think they're kind of trying to slowly work his way back into it. They're just taking it super careful with the knee. But all indications are that he's ready to go, and their expectation is that he'll be ready week 1 to return to the role that everyone was hyped for last year. I think a lot of people, it's funny, he's only missed 1 year, but being as though it was his second year, he's missed, half his career in a sense. And I think that's caused some people to kind of forget what J.K. Dobbins was able to accomplish in that rookie year. And so let me just give a bit of a reminder here, Jimbo.
Mm-hmm. Give him a reminder, Glenn.
Yeah, so he led the league. He led all running backs in the National Football League in yards per carry his rookie season, averaging 6 yards per carry, which is just insane. And in fact,
gross.
While he led all running backs, he was 3rd overall in the league, trailing only Lamar Jackson, who averaged 6.3 a carry, and Kyler Murray, who averaged 6.2 per carry. So the guy is just a big play waiting to happen. And it's funny because, when JK first came out, some people doubted his home run speed. But I think this year we'll certainly put some of those doubts to rest because the guy is fast. He's explosive. He's got an excellent vision. He'll run through you. He'll run around you. There's really not a lot of there's no real weaknesses to his game. He did an excellent job of making sure he developed the pass catching portion of his game. That way he's not a one-dimensional, downs 1 and 2 type of back. He wants to make sure he was a 3-down back, and he is that. So I'm excited, Jimbo, but I wanted to ask you to talk about what, because I just touched on briefly about the pass catching he brings. What does he bring to the group that maybe Gus, who you mentioned some people's favorite running back is JK. We all know who your favorite running back is on the team, and that's, of course, Gus Edwards. But what does J.K. Dobbins bring to this team that kind of complements or maybe checks some other boxes that Gus doesn't?
Yeah, to me, it's thunder and lightning, right? Like J.K. is your starting pitcher, right? Who's got stuff. He's got a variety of pitches. Gus is, you play the Sandman. He's got 1 pitch. He comes in the game. You know what's going to happen. It's
Throw that
cutter.
Cutter.
And that's all. It's like, yeah, Gus is going to smash you in the face. And you'll get tired of it. You get a migraine and you want to move out of the way. So there, to me, thunder and lightning, any other comparison you can make, because, they rely on different things. While they both have a certain level of physicality, they're certainly different in Gus relying on his ability to lean forward. He's not a home run hitter. Gus also has great balance. He certainly doesn't, at least didn't initially have the same vision as JK, and he's gained some wiggle, but they're so different in those ways, right? Like Gus is more a meat and potatoes type running back. It's really that simple. Like I still believe that if Gus Edwards played in an era or 2 back, like, take it back 10, 20 years, he would have been a 1st-round pick.
Yeah.
Because he's that good at that part of football, right?
Well, I think if you redrafted his year, I think not only would he be drafted, but he'd be a high pick in my opinion.
Yeah, I think he would have been 3rd, 4th round.
Yep.
right? Like, so yeah, they go together so well because of their differences. That's what makes it nice. But I'll tell you what, something I was thinking about was at first I was a little concerned about J.K. coming back because I know he's been wanting to come back and he's been pushing the trainers and things like that. And I was thinking, man, I'm watching him making all these cuts and he depends so much on his change of direction and his change of speed. Those two things are what his balance, change direction, change of speed. Well, you need good knees to do that, right? But the thing about J.K. that probably has him feeling very confident is that this was not a non-contact thing. You know what I mean? It was a weird tackle that's happened one time in his entire career. So if it takes that long to happen again, he probably feels pretty good about it. You know what I mean? So he's got to be feeling pretty good and comfortable with the fact that like this didn't happen in practice. And that might be part of the reason why he's I'm no doctor, but like if I were Gus and it were a non-contact scenario, I would feel more hesitant psychologically about getting back out there. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, because when you're making a cut, that cut that he made, that Gus made that tore his knee is a cut he's probably going to have to do 1,000,000 times over again because it probably wasn't anything significant about that cut. It was probably a cut he's done 1,000,000 times before.
Yeah, wasn't it in a walkthrough?
Yeah, if I
remember, it was
remember,
a non-contact practice.
I know it was non-contact. Yeah, so. Yeah. But I think it was just a non-contact portion because at that point, we weren't to the season yet, so there wasn't. I don't think it was like a traditional walkthrough, but it was a Yeah, they were close, but I think it was one of the non-con. It was the non-padded practices, and then there goes the knee. So I agree with you. I think if it's a non-contact, you're every time you cut with. Whether there's someone around or not, it's going to, at least in the beginning, be in the back of your mind. But with J.K., he can do all those, non-contact stuff free in mind and only really have maybe any reoccurring or some sort of hesitancy if he has a guy approaching in a similar fashion as the guy who injured his knee.
Now, this is really what comes to my mind, and I would like us to kind of discuss about this. What does this mean early on for the early portion of the season for the Ravens? Because it looks like Gus isn't going to – I'm not counting him out, but it looks like there's a high likelihood Gus isn't going to start the season.
Yeah.
Now, it also, on the other end of that, looks like J.K. is. So what does this mean for the Ravens from a running back perspective early on? I guess what my real question is, what it really comes down to is playing and being impactful. J.K. is going to play, so check that off the list. Glenn, do you see him making – an impact, or do you think it's going to be one of those situations where it's going to take him 6, 10, 12, maybe a full season to really be back to J.K. form?
Well, I think that could end up being the case where we may not see the best of J.K. for another year. But at the same time, I fully expect him to get, at the very least, in the initial part of the season, the same workload he was getting as a rookie. Because I think his workload would have expanded in a big way had he been healthy last season. So I think in the initial parts, he'll still be a contributor. He'll still be play a big factor. But I don't think he'll be expected to be a workhorse in the absence of Gus Edwards because they have the ability to cycle in some pretty talented backs that are on the team and allow J.K.'s knee to get fully, not just I think the knee is fully healed, but it's like John always says, your body builds calluses. And every part of your body is going to continue to build calluses as you work yourself into football shape. And so I think during that callousing process that John talks about, I think he'll have a slightly reduced workload, but still big time contributor. But as the season goes on, there's no doubt that his role is going to be expanded. And then next year, man, he can really hit the ground running. But I tell you what it does to the group, Jimbo. I think it makes it an even more interesting running back battle because I agree. I think Gus might ultimately start the season on PUP, which forces him to miss the first 6 weeks, which I think almost it all but guarantees a spot on the roster for at least Corey Clement or Mike Davis. And to me, I think the leader, only because he's been here longer and he's been in the league longer, is Mike Davis. So I think Mike Davis gets a huge boost from the fact that it's likely that Gus is not going to be ready and he'll need to help shoulder the load with J.K. Dobbins and Tyler Beatty.
Okay, but this is my real question. Fantasy folks want to know.
Yeah.
Am I taking J.K.? How early?
Oh, you're taking J.K. and you're doing it quite early. And the reason why is because this offense is going to be ridiculous, and he's going to have a lot of opportunities to score touchdowns. And I think that, they tend to. I think in goal line situation, let me ask you this, Jimbo. In a goal line situation, do you think there's even a small part, or how big of a part do you think it is that plays in the coach's mind when they're deciding personnel? Don't you, at least I think, if I'm coach, I'm trying to get as many, if it's a 3rd and 1 at the 1, I'm putting J.K. in. Or unless Gus is back, then I'm putting Gus in.
Sure.
But my point is, I'm giving as many touchdown opportunities to my top 1 and 2 over anyone else, because it's going to, make them happier. It'll likely maybe trigger some sort of, a lot of times there's clauses where they get more money based on touchdowns. They get that. I'm making sure my guys are happy. So if it's a 1st and goal from the 1, I'm giving it to J.K. I'm not giving it to Mike Davis, because I want J.K. to be nice and happy. I want him getting his touchdowns, because I don't think that J.K. is any more less likely to get there than Mike Davis or Tyler Beatty or Corey Clement. So don't you think he'll have first dibs at all the goal line opportunities?
Especially, like you said, early on with Gus not there. Yeah, I mean, I would agree with you, except number 8. Not that he won't have first dibs. I think it's more likely that he would be the one to run it over Lamar, but the impact of Lamar certainly will equate, will not equate, will impact that equation. And so that's just, a wrinkle that you have to consider. That's good to know. So you feel good about him even early on. I'm a little more, I think mentally he's ready. I do wonder if it's going to take him 6-10 weeks till we really start seeing him hitting his stride. I think we'll see it this season. I don't think it'll take a whole season, because like you talked about at the very beginning, based on the fact that from a calendar perspective, it was so early on that he's almost a full calendar year out at this point.
Yep.
But I think it'll take 6, 8, 10 weeks, somewhere between 6-10 weeks till we really start seeing J.K. full on. So that's my hesitancy from a fantasy standpoint. Not that matters. What we're really here to talk about is the Ravens. Yeah. But I'm excited about it. Everyone has said his energy is contagious. I know he's pushing hard. A lot of it is mental at this point. So I'm excited.
But he don't seem hesitant, Jimbo. Let me say.
No, he doesn't at all.
You talk about happy being back to practice. This guy was apparently giving out hugs to everyone he could find, including Eric DaCosta, who was on the field. Everyone's getting hugs, man. He couldn't wait to get back. So I'm not so sure if he has a ton of hesitancy. I think he's kind of been chomping at the bit.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think mentally he's there is what I meant. That's what I was trying to portray. I have some concerns that physically it's going to take a little while for him to come along. Where I think that Gus, he could probably be physically well along, but mentally, I think because it's a non-contact thing, he's got to work through it. It's a little slower. Gotcha. But let us know what your guys' thoughts are. Are you as excited as us that J.K. is back in the fold? What kind of an impact do you think he'll have early on? And help me out with my fantasy draft. Leave all your comments below.